friends, and welcome to Post-Mormon Parenting. Last week was Sunday, September 13th, 2020. Elder and Sister Rasband gave a face-to-face for young adults where they answered some questions that people had previously submitted. It was really hard to get through. We started recording our reaction to it, and about 45 minutes in, we realized that our microphone had not been plugged in. So we had gotten zero audio that whole time. This was a really troubling and difficult thing to watch, as you'll see. And so the idea of going back and re-recording all of that was too overwhelming. By this time, or by the time we had gotten around to noticing that the microphone was unplugged, both of us were already really worked up and really having a difficult time with what they were talking about in the video. Part of it was quite triggering for us and also really enraging. So rather than try to go back through and give you our reaction to the whole thing, I'm going to focus on just this one part. So one of the questions that they received from the audience was from someone who called himself Harry. And Harry says, "I have serious problems with the truth claims of the church, and I'm considering removing my name from the records of the church. Can you give me a reason why I should stay?" And of course, our answer would be, Harry, go for it. Let's see what the Rasbands have to say. Elder Rasband starts by saying, let's reframe that and talk about why I choose to stay. Now, this is a funny way of saying it, why I choose to stay, because I don't think Elder Rasband actually understands. Maybe he does. But he kind of gives this idea, this vibe, that he really has no idea what Harry's talking about. That he has no idea what the issues are around the truth claims of the church. That he has no idea that there actually would be valid reason for having issues around the truth claims of the church. So is Elder Rasband really choosing to stay despite the problems around the truth claims of the church? It's not really that meaningful of a decision. He doesn't know what the truth claims are anyways, so how can he choose to have faith despite them? Later on in this face-to-face devotional fireside, whatever, in this face-to-face video, he and his wife talk about this time that Elder Ballard, they think, had said that if you focus on anti-Mormon literature floating out there on the internet, first of all, it's not floating, and it's not just out there on the internet. It comes from actual Mormon journals, documents, journal discourses, newspapers, farms, archaeological data, BYU, the church's own gospel topics essays. This is anti-Mormon literature. Basically, anything that is not faith promoting. I mean, it's like what President Packer said several years ago. He said, not all truth is helpful. I could say to any of these secretaries in the church office building that they are short, fat, and ugly, but that wouldn't be particularly helpful, would it? See, not all truth is helpful. And he was driving this idea that even truth around church history and church documents, seer stones, etc., is not particularly helpful. What he really meant was not all truth is faith promoting. And you're absolutely right. Truer words were never spoken, at least not by you, President Packer. Not all truth is faith promoting. And that is what is known as anti-Mormon literature floating out there on the internet. Anything that's true about the church, but that isn't faith promoting. In fact, maybe faith harming. Anyway, going back to what Sister Rasband says that Elder Ballard had said, and he said, if you focus on this anti-Mormon literature that's floating out there, you'll be stuck in rebelliousness and confusion, which again, you won't. Therefore, the apostles, other general authorities, must not dirty themselves in the mud. They must not try to understand what these issues are. They must not ever designate portions of their time to focus on this work. If they do, they'll lose the spirit. They'll be stuck in rebelliousness and confusion. So therefore, they must not have any idea what Harry is talking about. It would be like Elder Rasband talking to Harry and saying, like, what are you talking about? There's only one account of the first vision. Like, why would you have problems if someone says there's more than one account? That's obviously anti-Mormon lies. Why you gotta focus on people saying that Joseph Smith was a treasure digger? Pfft, that's not true at all. I don't know what you're talking about. And why do people keep talking about Joseph Smith having multiple wives? Even he said, people are accusing me of having multiple wives where I find only one. Why would anyone dare to accuse our hero of saying that he had marital relations with anyone except Emma? See? There's no reason for concern. So in short, Harry, what Elder Rasband would really like to say to you is, he doesn't know what you're talking about, so just pray and you'll get all the answers that you need from the Holy Ghost. Done. But here's where the real troubling part comes in, because in order to answer Harry's question, Elder Rasband doesn't say all of that, what he should have said. And instead of being honest about the fact that there are issues and that there are valid reasons for concern that Harry and others like him might have, and instead of owning up to the fact that the church has consistently obfuscated information like this, the church has excommunicated people who brought up real, genuine information that now the church does own and even has published in their gospel topics essays. Things that now the church admits is true quietly, ever so quietly. Instead of doing that, he exploits this other person's story, this other person's very traumatic and very triggering story in order to sell this idea that he's trying to sell to Harry and to other people like him who are also discovering information, because we live in the information age, who are realizing that the narrative that they were taught about the church is incorrect, using that to sell this point, to sell this idea that, Harry, you can only really be happy and have a fulfilling life here in the church. Otherwise, you might just want to die. If you leave the church, you'll have nothing. Elder Rasband asks this guy who identifies himself as Dominic Still. Now, I've heard that's not his real name. Good for him for using a pseudonym. So this person, Dominic, says, I'm just going to quote what he says. I'm not going to read all of it because I think that's irresponsible. He says, after graduating high school, I had the opportunity to go pole vaulting collegiately. He says, my focus is at that time really not what they should have been. He doesn't go into any details. But he said, before I found the church, I was going down a pretty dark path, dealing with some mental stuff, whether it was depression or some anxiety. And the way I really dealt with that was drinking or going out and partying or going out to find some other outlet in a way to numb myself. Very, very common. Not a single person who lives on the earth lives and escapes some form of trauma, some kind of pain that they want to numb. And so we look for that in different ways. It often turns to alcohol or partying or drugs or whatever else, maybe some other unhealthy coping mechanisms to help numb that pain inside, especially if we're not at a place where we have resources to really healthfully deal with that pain inside and process that. So this guy has some kind of underlying trauma, some pain that he's trying to numb. He's going about it in unhealthy ways. Then he says, I had a friend who went to church, but she was out of town at that time, but I was like, I need something more right now, and I need to go to church. So he goes to church, and he feels really good there. He feels at home, he's welcomed there, and he just feels like, yeah, this feels right. And it's starting to numb that pain in a way that was more effective than the other ways that he'd been trying before. So he says after going to church, things started to get better. Makes sense. He said I started having more structure, something to hold on to, but the thoughts of suicide kept getting more and more strong. Right, because each time you have a different coping mechanism, whether that's an unhealthy one or a healthy one, they both still serve the same purpose of numbing the pain that's on the inside. Whatever your coping mechanisms are, whether they seem really healthy or unhealthy, they still are masking the problem that's going on deep inside. So he says, one night, I kind of made the decision for myself that I wanted to end my life. Okay, so now he goes on and he talks about what that night was like. I'm not going to go into detail about that. I'm not going to read it. I don't think things like that should be shared without an overabundance of caution, because what we know from research is that suicide contagion is a real thing. And when we talk about it, especially when we romanticize it or use it in elevation emotion kinds of settings, it can have the effect on vulnerable people who are already in a tough, dark place to give them that little extra ounce of feeling like this could be a good thing for me. This could be a good thing for the loved ones in my life if I just ended it and made this be all over. So when we talk about suicide and when we talk about suicide prevention, we must do it in a very, very cautious way. And we never, ever talk about it in a public way like I'm doing without also offering up suicide prevention tips. Suicide awareness, how to recognize the signs in someone, and where to go for help if you do feel like you or your loved one is struggling with thoughts of suicide, which you can all find in the description box below. If you find yourself going from one coping mechanism to another, understand what you're doing. Understand that you're numbing the pain inside, and that these coping mechanisms, no matter how good they feel or how healthy or unhealthy they seem, are still masking the deeper problem. In order for true healing, you've got to address the root problems. Suicide and mental health are extremely complex and should never, ever be presented in a way that the Rasbands did. It should never, ever be used to sell a certain idea or a certain philosophy like they're doing in this face-to-face. What they did was incredibly reckless and irresponsible and not in keeping with guidelines that we know can help save people's lives. What they did was dangerous, and they never should have done that. And as a leader of a powerful organization, he should have known better. Harry talks about why he didn't end up going through with it, and in the morning, he prayed. He prayed a lot, he read scriptures, he fasted. He got himself into this very deep meditative state. And what we know about meditating and fasting is that it often can produce this elevation emotion, which is exactly what occurred to him. He got this feeling of comfort and peace, this feeling that, yes, it's true. It's all true. All of it. It's totally true. Dominic ends his story by saying, "The church gave me everything, Harry. Please don't leave. Before the church, I had nothing. And now that I have the gospel of Jesus Christ, I have everything," which sends another terrible message that being outside of the church or leaving the church, you'll have nothing. And that people who are in the church have the opportunity to have everything. This sends another kind of message that has been perpetuated in the church, as far as I can tell, since its founding, that when you have pain and anxiety and depression in your life, all you need to do is pray it away. What you really need to do is come to Jesus, and Jesus will heal you. You don't need to go to outside psychologists or therapists or psychiatrists. That's all Satan's copycat version of the real healing power of Jesus Christ. People who have tried this, tried praying away their life struggles, praying away their anxiety disorders, praying away their mental illnesses or depression, it does not work. It can be a coping mechanism for a while. but it never fully addresses all the pain that's going on deep inside. Unfortunately, though, this kind of philosophy keeps lots of members of the church and members of other fundamental religions in this terrible, agonizing loop of feeling like all of my problems are my fault because I prayed and I've done all the things that I'm supposed to be doing for God to take this burden away from me, or to make my burdens lighter, or for Jesus to heal me. I've done all the work that He has asked me to do. I have metaphorically washed myself in the Jordan River 7 times and I'm still not cured. That means there's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with the way that I'm doing. I just need to keep going at this more and more and more. And the more I try, the more I fail. And the more I feel this self-loathing and hatred of myself and shame and despair. And guess what that does? Makes my depression and anxiety worse. And we wonder why Utah has one of the highest suicide rates in the whole country. And it's not the elevation. When I was still believing, I really enjoyed Elder Holland's talks because he was the one and only one that I know of who ever addressed mental health and mental health awareness. And he really wasn't even that good at it, but it was just great to have someone who would say things like, if you don't feel like you can forgive someone right now, then don't. Just wait. It's okay. It's okay if it doesn't happen right now. Another great thing was when he talked about depression and you can't just pray it away. But this face-to-face by the Rasbands delegitimizes all of that work that Elder Holland had done. It delegitimizes the need for mental health awareness, the need for seeking out professional help. It makes people who have mental illness or mental disorders or temporary situational depression and anxiety, makes them feel like it's your fault. You're not praying hard enough. You're not fasting enough. You're not tending the temple enough. You're not paying enough tithing. You're not fulfilling your callings enough. And that's why God has given you this thing and is not answering your prayers to take it away. You should be so happy. This is the plan of happiness. Men are that they might have joy. Why would God give you this life of misery when men are that they might have joy? So this must not come from God. It's from you. You just need to let God take it away. Lay it at His feet and let Him take it. And that's the kind of attitude that perpetuates these cycles of depression and loneliness and isolation and anxiety. As the leader of a powerful organization, they're sending this message to all the young adults that this is being aired to, that if they're having similar doubts about the church, depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, that they should do the same as Dominic, that they should follow his example. They had every opportunity to remind everybody in the audience that if they're struggling with mental health issues, which chances are many of them are, that they should seek out professional help, professional treatment, medicine, that these are things that God has given us to help us through, that we can't just pray away our struggles, but that we need to take advantage of the resources that God has given us. This is how they could have framed it. And they had every opportunity to do so, and they did not. And that is part of the reason why I say what they did was reckless and dangerous. The rest of the face-to-face is very similar. I mean, for those of you who are familiar with the BITE model of cults, that's BITE, it's an acronym. It stands for behavior control, information control, thought control, and emotional control. The Rasbands hit on every single part of the BITE model during this face-to-face. I know it's so hard to see when you're in it, and when I was in it, if someone had said that to me, I would have been extremely defensive, so I get it. But being out of it now, it's so clear to see the manipulation, the propaganda, and the exploitation, this giving these non-answers and instead promoting this very emotional experience by putting this guy's suicidal experience up on a pedestal and sensationalizing it. Again, extremely irresponsible. And then using fear and guilt and shame to keep people in the church. Remember what J. Reuben Clark said about the truth and the church. He said something to the effect of, if we have the truth, then any investigation can't harm it. If we have not the truth, then any investigation ought to harm it. Why are they giving these non-answers? Why aren't they going into any kind of investigation about the church? Because they know that that can harm it. They know that that can lead to a loss of faith in their followers. So instead, they resort to these cheap, irresponsible, terrible tactics of trying to get people to stay. My message to the Rasbands: shame on you for pulling this. Shame on you for exploiting vulnerable individuals. Shame on you for putting more vulnerable individuals at risk because of what you've done. Shame on you for perpetuating a culture which trivializes mental illness, which makes it sound like all you need to do is pray it away and you'll be fine. Shame on you for being terrible leaders and neglecting to give your followers actual, helpful resources for real life struggles. To my viewers, if you or anyone you know is struggling with mental health, go seek out professional help. If you don't know where to find it, a great place to start is by checking out psychologytoday.com. You can find providers in your own area, and you can filter by insurance that they accept, if they accept insurance, what kind of gender you prefer, if you prefer a gender or non-binary, what kind of specialties you're looking for, what kind of services they might offer. That's a really great place to get started. There is nothing wrong with going. Like I said, no human being in this life escapes without some measure of trauma. And there's no point in trying to compare trauma, saying like, oh, that person's is so much bigger than mine. I should be able to deal with these petty little things in my life. If you have pain inside that you're trying to numb, that you're having a hard time dealing with, find someone to talk to about it. Oftentimes people go to therapy with one particular issue in mind, and things end up coming up in therapy that they didn't even know they were struggling with. It can be so eye-opening. And there are places too that have therapists who will work at a reduced fee to accommodate your income. It's a lot cheaper than paying tithing. Dominic Still, we only got this like tiny snapshot of your life, but it sounds like you probably still have some underlying things that need to be addressed. I wish you all the best in your life. Harry, wherever you are, quitmormon.org. Be safe, my friends. Don't take the Rasbands' advice. Follow those medical professionals, and I'll see you next time. Mwah! Take care.